to the Caribbean. Over here we have the Pilgrims, a story that we're all very familiar with. Over there we have the painting that, for reasons that don't quite make sense in my own head, is actually my favorite of the larger paintings. That is the Baptism of Pocahontas. So for those of you who have not seen the non-Disney version, what actually happened is they wanted to get married. She was not Catholic. They asked her to convert. She was baptized. Now, if I remember correctly, she was actually quite young when this was supposed to take place, but at the same time, people did not live to be very old at all. So if you look at it through that lens, it's a little bit more normal. Over here is probably one of the most famous paintings of all of American art. That is the presentation of the Declaration of Independence. If you've ever seen a $2 bill, that's the painting that's on the back. Thomas Jefferson lived to be very, very, very old. So old, I think 83 was the age, which was unheard of back then. A good example of how old he lived to be is there's actually about 5-year overlap between the lives of Thomas Jefferson and the life of Abraham Lincoln. So Abraham Lincoln was a toddler by the time Thomas Jefferson died. Thomas Jefferson lived to see a whole lot.
He did.
But since he was still alive, he was alive to see this painting begin being worked on. And what he apparently had said to the person painting it is, if you're going to paint me, you got to paint me as one of the tallest people in the painting. So that's him in the kind of orange vest there, just like a little bit taller than most of the people around him. These two paintings right there, if you're a political junkie, are a great lesson in how quickly political facts can change on the ground. Over here, we have the surrender of the French at the end of the French Union. Watch out, guys. Over there, we have the surrender of the British at Yorktown. So over here, Britain's our ally, France is our enemy. Over here, France is our ally, Britain's our enemy. In fact, that person on the white horse is not even George Washington. It's actually Marcus Lafayette, who came over and helped train our soldiers. Washington's actually on the brown horse in the background. That's the leg raised right there. If you've seen the movie The Patriot, it actually gets this moment pretty accurately. Cornwallis, when he was encircled at Yorktown, did not want to go out and present his sword to George Washington, which is what you did when you lost the war back in the day. Instead, he sent his subordinate to do it, which is this man in the red here, and did it on his behalf. So he was a very sore loser. The painting you can't see right now, I've gotten into arguments with people about this before, but to me it's probably the single most important moment in American history. There's a couple who could take that distinction, but this one is definitely in the running. And it depicts the General Washington at that time giving up command of the Continental Army after the Revolution was over. Now, as everyone knows, it was popular opinion in America at the time that after the Revolution was over to make George Washington the first king of the United States. The majority of members of Congress wanted him to be the first king, and it was definitely the opinion of the public. George Washington, after he resigned control of the military, said, "No, I don't want to be your king. In fact, I don't want to be in politics altogether." And he went back home to Mount Vernon during the time we were under the Articles of Confederation. And he only came back to Washington to be the first president after it was a unanimous decision by everybody in Congress that he would be the first king. So that was a real hinge moment where history could have became, just like Britain, and thousands of Americans died trying to teach, or a new nation ruled by laws and not people. So that was a huge moment, and it's definitely to George Washington's credit. So up here we have the Capitol Frieze. The Capitol Frieze was done by 3 different artists, actually 4, but we'll get to that later. And it follows the same principles as the paintings down here, depicts different important events in American history, beginning with Columbus coming off the boat there. So the first artist painted from Columbus all the way to the man with the sword raised on the back of the horse. Now, I'm not an art history expert or anything, but the way you can tell that it's a different person is right after the man on the horse, you start seeing that odd three-dimensional foot-to-foot painting that you don't see in the earlier fresco. So that's kind of how you tell it's a new artist and a new style taking over. The other artist did not complete because he died of natural causes. He was an older gentleman. And the next artist took over and painted from the man on the horse all the way over to right about where the 2 men are shaking hands at the end of the Mexican-American War. Now, and where he also died. And the third and final official artist took over from the two men shaking hands all the way over to the Wright brothers in the discovery or invention of flight. Now, we've accomplished a lot since then. You know, in hindsight, you kind of wish we would have had a spot for the defeating of Nazi Germany, for the moon landing, things like that. But they didn't know at the time, so we'll give them a pass. Now the fourth artist, there was another artist who painted in between official artist number 2 and official artist number 3. He was definitely a real person you could read about in the Library of Congress, but he gets almost no credit. And the reason that is he only had 2 days on the job. So the story was with him, he was painting right about where that tree was right there, and whatever paint they used back then, and truth be told, paint still does this today, gives off really strong fumes, and he actually fell. He fell and he caught himself on this lip right here, where he hung for nearly, I think, 10 minutes before people could figure out a way for him to get down. He lived, but he went back up the very next morning, painted one brushstroke, and said, "You know what? I can't do this anymore. It's not worth it to me." So he does not get any credit for the fresco, but he did still work on it, so I like to talk about him and do his well. So up there we have one of the most unusual paintings in all of American art. That's the Apotheosis of George Washington. It is a massive painting. I went up in that walkway last week, and what you'll find is every painting can be anywhere from 5 to 6 feet tall, each one of the individual figures. It's supposed to be the dimensions of a high school-sized basketball court, but in circular form. So it's just truly massive. It was done by a single Italian artist who did not speak English very well, but when he came to the United States, what he found was that everybody loved George Washington. So what he ended up depicting was George Washington literally ascending into heaven to become a god. So if you see Lady Freedom, if you follow her sword to the man in the purple blanket and the blue colonial uniform, that is George Washington. Now, another thing he took over from his culture to ours is that he put Greek gods interceding at different times in American history. Another reason he did that is the style he was a little bit more comfortable with. What he was famous for before this painting was every time the Sistine Chapel needed renovation, he was the guy they called in to work. So all of Michelangelo's, all of Da Vinci's old paintings are all touched up by this one artist. He laid on his back and painted the entire thing with a kind of a series of slabs. Right now, as you can see, they're restoring the fresco and that painting here. The reason that is you know, there's a couple million people visit the Capitol each year, and all of the constant breathing creates a very interesting humidity in this room, which over time will distort the painting. So from time to time, they'll go and touch them up. Now the statues. So the rules with the statues, other than Martin Luther King over here and the suffragettes, which we'll get to later, the rules with the statues, to be in this room, you have to be a president. And one of the things that we're kind of proud of over here on our side of the aisle is this is the best room. It's completely dominated by GOP presidents. See, over here you have Grant, Lincoln. You can't see him right now, but Garfield's in there. Jackson is not one of ours, but Ford is, Reagan is, and Eisenhower is. The Eisenhower statue kind of causes part of the controversy. The reason that is that was actually put in here by the Kansas delegation. But Eisenhower lived a good deal of his life in Texas, so a lot of the Texas people, you know, don't think that Kansas can actually lay claim to him. The thing is, there's plenty of famous people from Texas, plenty of other presidents from Texas, so I think they should, you know, let them have Eisenhower. So other interesting about the statues, the suffragettes and Martin Luther King, who also was a Republican, little knows that. Once every, I believe it's 5 years, the states will get together and decide to send a statue as a group. So the first year they sent the suffragettes. The suffragettes are Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Susan Anthony. One of the things that always people know about the statue is the thinking was the artist at the time was struggling for not get finished, and the statue remains unfinished. In the background, you see kind of an amorphous fourth figure in the stone that's supposed to represent the time when we made them over the hospital, and we continue making hospitals on our presidents. Other things we'll see on our way out is what's interesting about Reagan is, you know, he's famous for Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall, so the platform on which his statue sits on is actually made out of this stuff.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, it's very cool to see.
It's the first I heard that.
So now we're about to go into the old Senate chamber. So this is where the Senate